You work with children who drool. Today's episode is for you. I am going to share with you my secret sauce that I have uniquely developed. And what it does is it eradicates drool, and it will do it in less than a year with any kiddo you work with. Now, when I say less than a year, I mean you're not going to see any drool at all. You're not going to see any mouth breathing. You're not going to see any low tone. All of that's going to disappear. You're going to see nice postural control. And I'm going to share with you how I do it. Now, before I do, I'm going to describe with you why there's a lack of a research base for this approach. And one of the reasons is because we are a bit too dogmatic in our thinking. What I mean is we tend to take a principle or an approach or a theory and we blindly apply it and kind of jump on that bandwagon and call that research-based. I'm going to give you an example of that. In the field of treating speech sound disorders, too often the principles of motor learning have been blindly applied to treating speech sound disorders without understanding the nuances of treating speech sound disorders, because the details really matter when it comes to treating speech sound disorders, what the population is, for instance, that you're working with. I'll give an example of that with the principles of motor learning. Oftentimes people will say, okay, when it comes to feedback, what you're going to want to do is reduce the frequency of the feedback. Give less feedback over time to promote generalization. Or you're going to want to reduce the knowledge of the feedback, and you're going to give knowledge of the feedback called knowledge performance and tell them if they're right or wrong, instead of giving them feedback on how they're producing the sound. Reducing that quality of the feedback and just letting them know if it's right or wrong is going to be better than if you tell them what exactly they're doing correctly. So we're just giving them a yes or no, and that's going to increase the generalization, because then they're going to think about, why am I doing that wrong, or why am I doing that right? Or another thing that is we've been told is to adopt this principle of giving less immediate feedback. So you're going to wait a little bit and then give them feedback, and then they can think about it themselves. Now, this is something the research indicates works when you're first or second grade and higher, not at the preschool kindergarten level. The reason for this is because the metacognitive skills have not yet developed. Now, this is one of those nuances that might seem like a little detail that we shouldn't worry about, that we're applying the principles of motor learning, we're doing evidence-based practice because an expert said so. But that's not evidence-based practice. That's blindly adhering to principles. And it's very high stakes, because if you do something like that, then the preschooler who does not have the metacognitive skills is not getting the feedback that they need in order to develop accurate motor plans and programs. And this is very important if you're working with a child with apraxia of speech who has poor feedback loop in how they're speaking. So it's very high stakes when we dogmatically apply principles in a black and white manner, and we say, this is how you do things, and this is research-based. So that is one thing we don't want to do. And if we looked at the principles of motor learning, they'll say, well, there's the specificity of the task. And drooling is more of an automatic function, and speech is more of a complex, higher level function that is volitional in nature. However, we could agree with that in the sense that if we do something simple like blowing a cotton ball on a straw or a motor activity, it's very simple. That is very different than speech, which is much more complex. And you're using different musculature. However, I'm challenging you to do the opposite. That's bottom up. That's if I do something very, very simple. If I do tongue wags, then I'm going to be able to speak better, right? Speech doesn't work that way. It doesn't work like a geyser. If I do something super simple, I'm going to be able to do something super complex. If I push the piano key, I'm going to be able to play Beethoven. It doesn't work that way. They are two very different tasks. If you're working on a super complex task, we're going top, bottom. We're doing the hard things first, And by doing so, and I'm going to talk about what happens in the mouth when you're doing a 3-element cluster and how that is going to directly impact the child's swallowing. We're talking about similar neuromuscular programming, neuromuscular functioning, in which we're going to be working on something much more complex for drooling. Now, there's been minimal research that said, well, if you work on speech, you don't get the impact on drooling. I'm not talking about working on speech. I'm talking about working on 3-element clusters. And that is something that is entirely different in how it's going to improve drooling in a unique manner that you're not going to get if you're working on single sounds. You're not going to get the same benefit if you're working on the S sound instead of an SKR blend or an SPR blend. The SPR or the SKR blend, doing it in the manner I'm going to share with you, is going to minimize the drooling because we're working at a high level on the same skills, the same neuromuscular functioning that's involved in drooling. So I'm going to share with you the 4 reasons why using 3-element clusters is going to make a difference. And I share this with total transparency. I don't have, like I usually do, a piece of paper that says, this is hot off the press. This is 2025 research. This is the best study to date we have. I can't wait to share with you. Let's talk about how we're going to use this on Monday morning. No, I'm telling you, no one has researched, I myself included, and published in a systematic way, 3-element clusters and working on those and the impact that's going to have on drooling. You can look at my book. You can look at the videos in my book. You can look at pictures of before and after children I've worked with for the last 15 years using this approach, and reliably, it has eradicated the drooling. So let's look at these 4 reasons why uniquely that the details matter, and having that 3-element cluster is going to reduce drooling or even totally eradicate it. This is when you're using your time more effectively. You have very little time to use in speech therapy. And I'm a real advocate of, if you're going to do anything, get the most for your buck. You have 30 to 45 minutes a week, because all insurance companies are going to cover. The school caseloads dictate the amount of time that you're able to provide. What we're going to want to do is get 2 for the price of 1. We're going to want to improve the child's speech, A, optimize gains there, while B, also reducing the drooling. Here are the 4 reasons why this works. And I want you to try this the way you would try this in a systematic way in your back porch. First of all, get some baseline. The first semester, I use singletons. I use business as usual. And I'm going to say, how are we doing on the drool? Are we making gains in the drool? I'm rating it from 1 to 10. The drool, I give it a 10. The shirt is soaking wet by the end of the therapy session. So we're at a level 10. It's very severe. And then you're going to say, okay, 2 months later, give it 2 months. How's the drool today? Okay, the drool's a 9. We've made some improvement here. Now, the next quarter, I want you to say, I worked on the S the first semester. Let's go ahead and work on something like SPR. We're going to change our target to SPR. Look at the drool. You rated as a 9. Look at the end of the semester. 2 months later, we have 4 quarters in the schools. And see, is like, wow, the drool now is gone from a level 9 to a level 4. I would rate it as a level 4 now. I see just a little bit of saliva on his chin's a little bit wet now. So we went from wet shirt to a little water on his chin. I'm going to rate it as a 4. I'm going to go back to my old ways. We're going to go back to working on a singleton sound. The child needs to work F and V or whatever this semester. For this quarter, F and V will go there. And then you go and you do that for a semester. You look at the drool. Okay, the child was a 4, and now maybe they're a 4 still. They still have a wet chin, or maybe they've gone down to a 3. Next semester, go back and let's go to 3-element blends. All right, I'm going to try a 3-element blend, and the child needs to work on these sounds as 2 SPL. Okay, I'll do this 3-element blend. Oh, look at this. The child went from a 3 to a 1. So you're going to start thinking, like, this is the same child. I'm controlling for the maturation over time, and I'm finding that when I use the three-element blend instead of the single sound, I'm seeing greater decreases in the drool. So that's how you would assess this on your back porch, whether business as usual is working, the traditional speech therapy, if that's working in the drool, or whether the three-element is working in the drool. And then, of course, you're also going to look at your gains, because it takes 2 months for generalizable gains to occur. And you can just simply, at the preschool level, give the single word speech test. That's reliable with a child's connected, spontaneous speech sample. It takes 10 minutes to give. I think you're going to say, wow, when I work on the three-element clusters, I'm getting a lot less errors on the single word speech test. Not only that, I have a lot less drool. Now, this is what I'm seeing in my back porch with diverse preschoolers with speech sound center disorders that I work with in a public school setting. How you do therapy is different. So would you get the same results? That's for you to explore. But I encourage you to explore. And the reason for this is I really follow my favorite quote from Einstein. I believe this very, very strongly, especially if you really want to change lives. If you really want to be an agent of change and you really want to rewire the brain when neuroplasticity is at the highest level, this quote is so brilliant. Such an important quote where you can't just accept things as black and white and not question or explore or do something different, DSD, do something better. So the quote is, concepts that have proven useful in ordering things achieve such an authority over us that we forget their earthly origins and accept them as unalterable givens. The path of scientific advance is often made impassable for a long time through such errors. So Einstein said it never is anything black and white. It's always all of the above. What we need to do is pay attention to the details and do it better. That's how we don't make progress. Oftentimes in our field, instead of growing like a spiral in which we pick up new concepts and we expand and we get higher and higher, instead we sway like a pendulum and we go to the left and we go to the best practices in all of the above proposition, in which you need to consider the details in order to make it richer, in order to improve upon it. The first reason why the three-element clusters work so well on Drool is for jaw stability. In the English language, all of the three-element clusters begin with the S sound. If you were to stop and make the S sound with me, you would see that you need the jaw stabilized. No more Cookie Monster mouth that our droolers did. If I worked on the singleton S sound, they would just go, and they would have that mouth wide open like Cookie Monster, and they'd close it like a puppet and go, and they're just using the jaw, right? But when we make the S, if you just stop in your car, wherever you are, if you're watching this on YouTube with me, you have it closed, you're retracting the lips, and you have that tongue in a suction. It's all around the bumpy ridge around your mouth. So if you make it with me right now and go, that jaw is stable. You cannot make drool if your mouth is stable. So you have the stable mouth already there, and it needs to stay there. And then after that, we are going to have to differentiate. We can't use our jaw to talk. It's here to make, for instance, the SKW. I'm going to say SKW so understand, through the squaw sound, right? A word such as like squish, right? So it's spelled SQU orthographically, all right? So let's keep that mouth closed. Now, what I want you to notice is you have to differentiate. The mouth is closed, the jaw's going to stable. And the second reason why this is so effective, this is like swallowing. The jaw's stabilized. You're using your tongue differentiated, separate from the jaw. Just think about the neuromuscular functioning and the similarity here, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to move the tongue and you're going to move the lips, and the jaw's going to stay stable. So we don't have time to talk like Cookie Monster when we're doing a three-element cluster. Because when you do a 3-element cluster, you're seeing 3 total consonants, 3 total sounds, all of it, right? In the amount of time that it takes to produce 2.5. You have to move fast, right? So you can't be doing, okay, I'm going to say SKW. I'm going to go, so open the mouth, ka, and then I'm going to go, oh, and I'm moving my jaw all over the mouth like Cookie Monster. Then you're not going to be able to do it in 250 milliseconds. Yeah, you're taking too much time. So we've got to instead be efficient. What does being efficient mean? You keep the jaw where it is and you're moving the lips and the tongue. That's how we talk, right? That's how we control drool as well. We keep the jaw stabilized. It's not through external factors, and not that external factors haven't worked where they have some feedback mechanism like a watch that goes off and the child checks to see if their mouth is closed, kind of like the potty watches that you have. It vibrates and you're, oh, okay, is my mouth closed? It's internal. What the child's learning is you keep the mouth closed. And then for their differentiation, they're going to, if you say it with me, ooh, very little mouth movement. So I did the eskawa. Ooh. It's the lips and the tongue doing the work. And that's what's happening when we're swallowing. Okay, it's a very differentiated, fluid process. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, sure, there's this specificity of the task, but we have a more complex text that we're working on with similar neuromuscular functioning. So the next thing we're going to look at is the proprioceptive feedback. Now, what I always use is dynamic tactile temporal cueing. So I'm using multimodal cueing, whether I'm working on a child that has an R distortion, whether I'm working on a child that's stopping fricatives, or whether I'm working with a child that has child apraxia of speech. Every child on my caseload is going to get the multimodal cueing. And the reason for that is because then I can stop speaking. And the sooner I stop speaking and the child becomes the teacher is when learning becomes an active process. Once again, we're talking about internal feedback. The child's making the motor plan, deciding what they're going to say, where the tongue's going to travel, and they're executing it on their own. What we need to do is go multimodal so we can stop talking. The sooner, the better. So with the proprioceptive feedback, the child, let me explain how things work. The core develops first. Then we have the muscles that are proximal or near to the core, like the neck developing. And lastly, what these kiddos that have drooled issues have is they have difficulty with the last muscles, the tongue, the mouth, the jaw, the distal muscles. They develop lastly, right? So what we want to do is improve their proprioceptive feedback, their knowledge of how are we moving these lastly muscles to develop. And we do that through entrainment. Our body, what our body does, our mouth is going to do. There's that connection. When you say bye-bye and you wave your bye-bye hand, your mouth is opening and closing while you say bye-bye. When you say, come here, your tongue is pulling back. When you say, come here. Like we have this connection with our tongue and with our hands and with our lips and what we're doing, right? What we're going to do with DTTC, we are going to do these sounds with our bodies. When the child's touching their sides of the mouth to make the S sound, to retract the lips, they are improving through touch knowledge of where their lips are in space. When the child is pulling the hands out to do the S, nice and nice, they're improving their knowledge of how their lips are moving, how their tongue is moving when they're doing the ka sound, ka, and that their tongue is going back, ka. They're getting the increased proprioceptive feedback because they're doing with their bodies what their mouth is doing. And the core and the gross motor develops before the fine motor. So it's internal again. Once again, they are deeply learning internally, neuromuscular functioning, where their lips are. When they're saying the puss sound, they're touching the lips there. They're doing the popping the air. They're feeling it through their body. They're feeling it. They're seeing it visually. they're touching it, they're moving their body with it, they're learning it on a deep kinesthetic, visual, multimodal manner, touch manner. They're learning where those lips are, they're learning where that tongue is, they're learning where that jaw is. So we have the dynamic tactile temporal cueing that we're doing with the 3-element clusters. So this is another reason why this is so effective. It's very internal because you stop talking when you're saying the ska, ka, wa. You're not talking anymore. You're just doing the gestures. You're doing the visuals. You might do the imagery and see a snake sound to kind of plant that in their mind, that what they're doing with their mouth. But they're the teacher. It's an active process. They're making it happen. And they're doing it in a dynamic, what I mean dynamic, this is a moment-to-moment basis in which if you see that the child, for instance, their mouth is open, you can go and have them touch their lips like you do so that they can realize, ooh, my lips need to be together. You can up the prompting at any moment in time. You can also dial the prompting down at any moment in time. The whole name of the game is that the child is 80% supported so that you're building accurate motor plans, you're building accurate motor programming, and the child is going off on their own. So you're really building this internal system of neuromuscular functioning, in which the child is now more aware of how they're moving their lips, more aware of how they're moving their tongue, more aware of how they're moving their jaw, and as a result, they're better at swallowing. So that was the third reason why these complex clusters work, with combining it with dynamic tactile temporal cueing, and that is the proprioceptive feedback's improved. Now, the fourth reason why is that we're going very slowly when we do dynamic tactile temporal cueing. Now, when you're going really slowly, the child develops endurance. The secret behind the dynamic tactile temporal cueing is that you don't pause between sounds because speech, and here I am applying the principles of motor learning. It's a value. It's not a either or proposition. It's all of the above. So we speak in a continuous manner. So you never pause between sounds. However, you go slowly. And when you're going slowly, that allows the child time to get the articulators where they need to be to produce those sounds correctly in the manner correctly. It gives them the gift of time. Now, what is really important is when you're going slowly, that means the child's got to hold it. They're actually using motor control. So it becomes less of an involuntary movement. It's a very voluntary movement in which it's endurance. It takes work. So when we're saying this, kapwa, I'll hold it like this. If you can hear it or you can see it on YouTube, I'll hold it like fa, ooh, wa. So that is endurance. That is the child purposely moving their mouth, holding a challenging sound, and blending the three sounds together as you're doing the voicing, and you're taking 8 or 10 times even longer than you would say it in spontaneous speech. It's very volitional. It is like swallowing in the beginning. It hasn't developed automaticity yet. They are using motor control to perform these sounds in the beginning. What matters at this point is that 80% accuracy. We're going slowly like this so that we can build accurate motor plans, accurate motor programming, accurate execution. But what's happening is the child's developing endurance. It's kind of like if you can run a marathon, if you've ever trained for a marathon, I know I have, you're going to be better at Zumba. You're going to be better in spin class. You're going to be better at yoga and Pilates. You're going to be more fit because you've done something with a high level of endurance. So swallowing becomes a lot easier because you've been doing 3-element clusters, which are the hardest in our language. Some people would say liquids are, but I would say this is the hardest in our language because of all of the transitions and all of the mandibular control and all of the differentiation and proprioception it requires. You're doing that slowly. That's fairly hard. So we're doing the hard things first. And as a result, we get the drooling remediated naturally. I never have to tell the children to touch their chin, to feel if their chin's wet. I never have to give them even nonverbal clues to close their mouth because we've worked at the top. We've worked at the top of the waterfall. We're working at a much higher level. And as a result of that, the lake is getting deeper. It's rising and rising and rising to the waterfall. And that's naturally happening. This much easier skill is naturally developing because we're working on the 100-pound dumbbell. They can lift the 10-pound dumbbell without having to explicitly train on that. Right. So those are the 4 reasons why 3-element clusters are so effective at getting rid of the drool. Now, this is a bonus. The 5th reason, and this is something, like I said, this is what works, but what about the secret sauce works? This could be a big contributor. I do task-oriented movement activities. So task-oriented movement activities, if you're in my SIS membership, you know what those are. We have 2 every week. That's where you have a task. You're doing something with a task. You're doing it independently. And as a result of doing that task, your motor skills develop. Your postural control develops, your proximal motors develop, your distal fine motor skills develop, your coordination improves, your executive function improves, which all combined will improve not only your speech, but your ability to swallow, right? Because you have improved postural control, obviously gross, and therefore fine motor control. So that can be a big contributing factor. How much of an additive factor is that to the 3-element clusters? I would have to research that. I would have to say 3-element clusters sitting at a table, 3-element clusters, here we're doing it with the task-oriented movement activities. Who has better gains in their drool? Now, of course, you know I do the task-oriented movement activities because it improves executive function, because it improves the language, the literacy skills, and because it increases the dopamine levels, which makes learning more resistant to regression and to occur at a quicker pace, because I'm treating the whole child. But how much of that is improving the drooling? I'm not sure, because I haven't studied that. But I'm sharing with you my secret sauce from my back porch. I would love to hear from you when you try this on your back porch. Tell me what works. Tell me what doesn't work. I can tell you I have not used this approach with children that have severe cerebral palsy. So there are limitations simply because I haven't had a child with severe cerebral palsy that drooled. I've never worked with one. So I can't give you feedback in that area. I have worked with children with Down syndrome, and children with Down syndrome have improved by the 3-element consonant clusters with a decrease in drool. Like I said before, don't be dogmatic. Don't apply principles from some approach to everything you do. As a result, it's very high stakes. You can very much negatively impact your practice when you do so. And that is not going to create the change that you're capable of changing. I want you to do what you do best, which is to roll up your sleeves and make the world a better place, one child at a time. You will always be first.